Hey, what is happening, everybody? We're back with another Stephen King discussion. We're in full force today, talking again about Stephen King's It. Just can't get enough of that dancing clown. So good. Such a good movie. We're not really discussing the film as it is, though, today. If any of you remember, back in May of this year, I managed to pour over and read out some of the details regarding an early, leaked script of the movie when it was all still in the hands of director Cary Fukunaga, a script dated back to 2014. While there were some departures from the source material, the script still managed to keep the spirit of the original book, I'd argue at least, to some capacity. That original script was kind of dry and bare bones in regards to character depth and motivation. The relationship between the various losers was charming, but it didn't feel particularly real when you read it. It was more like these characters just became friends out of convenience. It didn't build to that organically. It felt very aware that it was about kids fighting against a killer clown, and the story lent itself to that, but it never really bothered to establish the losers as actual characters in their own right. They were just the protagonists. Well, that actually brings us here, because to my surprise, there were not one, but two more scripts of this film that were supposedly floating around the internet, with one seeming to lean more towards a script that had a lot more to complain about. At least that's what the word around the internet was. In which case, take that for whatever it's worth, but it still merited a look through for the channel because while the story beats and points are roughly the same, this 2015 draft of the Fukunaga script is a wholly different animal to the previous script I talked about. Before we get into it, a word of thanks is in order for the fan that actually hooked me up with this and the 2016 Doberman rewrite. I won't say who just to be on the safe side, but you know who you are. So thank you for giving us the chance to share this with all of the people that watch our content. Anyway, I'm sure you've waited long enough, so let's get into the meat of everything. First of all, spoiler warning, because like the 2014 script, a lot of things present in this is present in the film in some way or another. So if you don't want anything ruined for you, click out and come back after you've seen it. Second of all, characters have been changed greatly. Like the original 2014 script, several character names have been altered for this draft, with Bill still being named Will in this, and Henry Bauer still listed as Travis. The biggest, though, is the exclusion of a major character in this script, Stan Uris. The 7 children that stand up to Pennywise is reduced to 6, with Richie absorbing Stan's Jewish heritage and the plot point of his bar mitzvah, with Stan being reduced to that of a goldfish. Yeah, and I don't even think he gets 10 minutes of screen time. He just gets killed almost instantly by Travis and his gang. He's just flipped onto a griddle. I'd wonder if this is some sort of hidden contempt for the character, but I also have to wonder if this is just Fukunaga's way of dealing with what he perceived to be a weak link in his previous script, taking away a character he was having trouble with developing and instead focusing on the other kids as well, which kind of works to an extent. I'm not saying I'm happy that Stan was taken out. What I am saying is that I'm happy that Fukunaga and Chase Palmer attempted to fix what they considered to be a weak link, and actually focus on further creating characters out of the Losers Club. Most of them anyway, because I have to point out a character that does end up suffering a lot, and that's Mike Hanlon. Mike has a lot of changes made to him over the course of this script, and for the most part it changes the dynamic and importance that he plays in the story quite a bit. No longer does Mike and his father own a farm on the outskirts of town, Mike learning about the twisted nature of dairy from his father and equating the people of dairy to the livestock that are led to the slaughter. Here, they own a burger joint, and Mike's actual encounters with Pennywise and the wisdom his father has about the darker side of the town are pretty much scrubbed away. This is kind of where I take a problem, because in this draft, Mike seemingly has no actual personality or stakes in the story besides filling out the role of the 6th member of the Losers Club, who, for lack of a better phrase, just shows up and joins the group. They don't save him from Travis and his gang, he just hears them yell at the police and he joins them, which leaves him with essentially nothing of value. He's a caricature, which begs the question why Stan would be taken out if Mike still suffered from the same problems of the original script anyway, but on a whole other level. Now, these problems were somewhat rectified in the movie. Some aspects of his character from the book were returned, but I guess just the bare minimum taken with him was transferred over into the later eventual movie as well. But the actual spirit of the script is something that I like a lot, because as I said before, a majority of the characters are still incredibly fleshed out and have aspects and interactions about them that actually make them seem like real kids with real personalities, which is something you definitely want with an adaptation of It, the sort of childhood camaraderie that helps sell the angle of the power of childhood. It's powerful here and it works incredibly well for engaging the audience within the nature of the world of Derry, Maine. However, moving past this a little bit, I want to talk about Pennywise himself for a second, or as I like to call him in this, Bob Gray. If you've read the book, you know that this is an alias that it uses a lot, but I use that here instead of Pennywise because, like the 2014 script, a lot of the scares are undoubtedly human in nature, many preying on insecurities and lingering grief rather than overt fear. There's a scene that kind of points this out clearly in the script, and I think it's the biggest highlight of how this may not work entirely well when describing the separate encounters the kids have with Pennywise. In the script, Ben confronts it when he's thrown into the Barrens by the Bowers gang, coming face to face with a fisherman that rants and raves at the bullies. Now, it's never actually delved into anywhere else but here, but it's explained that Ben moved here with his mother after he contemplated suicide by almost jumping off of a building, backing out at the last second, something that Bob Gray takes advantage of and harasses the boy about. This never comes up again, and it doesn't speak to Ben's character very well throughout the rest of the script. These are just insecurities that flit across their minds, but it's never any intense fear that they have. The same thing happens to Richie to an extent, where Bob Gray preys on his homosexual feelings and thoughts, but this never really factors into anything within the course of the film. It's just a comment made every now and then that doesn't feed into Richie's development as a character. Now, this could be argued, definitely, but on my reading of it, Richie's homosexual thoughts aren't really regarded as being important. They're just an attempt to try and layer and pad the character out, adding another level of sexual torture into the script. Which is one of the biggest points of contention many people had with this script upon my findings on forums and chat boards. Its sexual nature. I had heard a variety of stories about this supposed script, a script that detailed very unsettling acts of sexual violence and depravity, stuff I'm not really going to discuss at large here on the grounds that everyone benefits from not knowing about them. But fortunately, a lot of these acts were not in this script. Perhaps those people had read another draft of the script, perhaps there's a draft that hasn't been released to the public, but details have been, who's to say. What I can say though is that outside of all of that, there's an exploration of sexuality within the confines of puberty, predation, and experimentation throughout the script. And while there's nothing extremely graphic, there's many things that are implied, and that's where the unsettling nature comes into play. Alvin Marsh, Beverly's father, had a role in this, as his advances in relationship with his daughter hinge on dialogue that's just borderline creepy and uncomfortable. There's only one instance where it's outright stated that he had committed atrocities on his daughter in the past, but it's obvious from their various interactions and Beverly's underlying fear that she suffered by his hand on more than one occasion, and Beverly's torture doesn't end with her father. The script actually makes it a point to emphasize that Beverly has a reputation within the town of Derry, being considered promiscuous by her classmates at school, much like the new movie out now. It plays a part in Beverly's struggle to come to terms with her womanhood, as it's been at several points as a gateway for her father to take further advantage of her and as a barrier that separates her from the other losers. It goes on from there, as many counts of implication and pubescent explorations of sexuality permeate throughout the story, and it does sort of add a layer of harsh, cruel reality to the narrative that can't be ignored, but on the other hand, it can really stand out from the rest of the script as a horror that more often than not separates from the main event, that being Pennywise and his feast on the children of the town. Coming back to Pennywise a little bit, I mostly wanted to take the time to focus on the actual climax and revelations of several aspects of the story. In the 2014 script, a lot of people took umbrage with the sort of starfish-like entity that appears in the end, a counter to the spider creature from the original novel and the 1990 miniseries. But I think it worked on the idea that it was supposed to embody some of the more imperceptible ideas of the creature in general. A mass of wriggling tentacles and intense eyes float in the water below the kids, all of this after the children find a series of foreign and otherworldly passages and doorways that lead to its lair. This 2015 script actually abandons that. It actually takes the time to make it something unknown. There's a prominent scene that kickstarts the third act, where it showcases the early colonists of Derry's township and their encounters with it. The sequence of disappearances of the township's children all come to a head as a mother confronts the creature stealing their children. A Pennywise that's naked, lithe, skin pale and translucent, described as some sort of half-formed human, almost like a Wendigo creature. This is the closest we get to some sort of true form for Pennywise, something that at its heart is just an emaciated version of the clown, which is honestly frightening in its own right, because the best thing that this script does is it keeps you in the dark about what exactly it is. Other than that, though, the script does suffer from what is arguably a pretty lackluster final confrontation with the creature, in which Will mostly runs and hides from the entity while the others attempt to find him as they finally see it as it appears outside of the children's fears. A giant orange cloud. Admittedly, this is, well, I'll be honest, this is lame. very lame, but for the most part it's only there to set up the separation of experiences between Will and the other losers. And the group defeats Pennywise in much the same way as before, by beating the shit out of him. There's not much different from here on out, so I think it's important to kind of close this out talking about how this script, while not really entirely accurate to the novel, in fact I'd say it takes huge leaps and bounds with the source material, I do actually find it to be an engaging read. It really works to make the losers characters unto themselves, some of them anyway, and it actually takes the effort to explore more of the relationship between them and how it builds up over the course of the story. The actual presence of Pennywise seems a little lacking, but it plays much more with the ever-present fear within children and childhood in general. The 2015 draft, I think, does a good job of capturing the spirit of the original novel, even if it doesn't find itself beholden to the source material all the time, and it really works to try and capture the themes present within the work regarding childhood and the strength we find in each other and those closest to us. Anyways guys, thanks for watching, and be sure to check out our whole playlist for Stephen King related discussions here on the Hybrid Network. If there's anything you'd like covered in the future, don't be afraid to let us know in the comments down below. Let your voices be heard, people. If you want to keep up with Hybrid Network, make sure you also like us on Facebook and give us a follow on Twitter. Stop by our website for articles and editorial discussions every day, and if you're feeling generous and want to help Hybrid Network to improve, maybe consider donating to our Patreon. Not only does it help to keep the lights on, it also helps us to continue to grow and improve our quality of content, all for you, the viewer. Thanks guys, and we'll see you all next time.